Okay, Book of Romans, 8th chapter. We got down through the 22nd verse, ready for the 23rd verse. Up until this time, just a quick review. Paul writes to the church at Rome, and the evidence that he lays out that the whole world is guilty. No matter who we think we are, or how great we are, or how much money we have, or how pretty we are, these things never factor in how God looks at us. He looks on our hearts. So the whole world is guilty. We're guilty of sin. We are sinners from our heritage, from our mother and dad, Adam and Eve. And then it talks about that we're justified by faith, we're sanctified by the grace of God, and we're clothed in the righteousness of Christ. We're delivered from the power of inward sin. We're delivered from death. And we're not made holy through the law, but we're made holy by the new law of grace, the law of love, the law of spirit. And then last week we found that we are adopted into the family of God when we ask Him to save us. And we find out that the whole creation, the entire world, was affected and will stay affected by what Adam and Eve did at the Garden of Eden. It not only brought death unto man, that we all suffer physical death, and we all are separated from God spiritually until we ask Christ to come back in our lives, but it also affected the earth. Now, in the Garden of Eden, when God created everything, animals didn't eat animals. There was not such a thing as a predator. Like for lions and tigers and those type bears, they were vegetarians. But because sin came, then it affected the whole world. They didn't have weeds in the Garden of Eden. Now think about that. But because of what Adam and Eve did, the whole creation that God created has been affected. But now the whole creation will revert back and be just exactly like it was in the Garden of Eden when Christ comes again. And all things will be made new. During the 1,000 years millennial reign, that's when the lions will eat straw again. That's, we won't, as far as the world as we know it now, will not be as it is now. Because it says that they will beat their weapons into plowshares. Man won't study war no more. It'll be a time of peace for 1,000 years. And then we come down to the 23rd verse. It's going to talk about us. Now what happens to us affects the creation. What happens to us affects animals. It affects plant life. It affects the entire universe. What happens to us when Christ comes again? 23rd verse, and not only they. And not only they. Now, who are the they? I got through telling you. Who are the they? Not only they.
Animals?
All right. Animals, the grass, the rivers, the streams, everything. Now, how do we know that? We studied it last week. Let's go back and read the 19th verse down. For the earnest expectation of the creature, and we told you last week, the word creature is creation. The creation waiteth for the manifestation of the Son of God. Now, the manifestation is to be revealed. Revealed, to take the veil off of it. So the whole creation, it's talking about the world, the earth as we know it now. For the creature, which is creation, was made subject to vanity. So when Adam and Eve sinned, it affected the whole earth. They became subject to vanity, not willingly. The earth did not choose to have thorns and thistles. Lions and bears did not choose to be predators and to be flesh eaters. That wasn't their decision. But because of Adam and Eve's sin, it moved upon the entire world, and it affected the entire world, God's creation. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who had subjected the same in hope, because the creature itself also, the creation itself also, shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption and the glorious liberty of the children of God. Now, what he's saying, when we are the key to everything that God has created. The world is in bondage because of our sin. Now, when Christ comes again, and when he takes us out, and then the 7 years tribulation, at the end of the 7 years tribulation, at the Battle of Armageddon, Christ comes, we come, the kingdom is set up, the devil is bound in a chain, and he's cast into the bottomless pit, and he's locked up for 1,000 years, and then that's when peace will be on the earth. So what happens to us is what's going to happen to the earth, is going to affect it. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain until now. Now, if you didn't underline this last week, underline it now. Until now. Until now. Now, it said the whole world is like a woman in labor. And I asked this question last week. How long has the world been in labor?
Since the fall.
Since the fall. Now, how long will she stay in labor?
Until the common, yeah.
Till Christ comes, and the 7 years tribulation, and the 1,000 years millennial reign. That's when the completion of it is done. Now, with us as human beings and animal life, I know what is a normal pregnancy? 9 months for a human. For a horse, it's 11 months, 14 days. For a puppy, how long? Barbara, I was counting on you.
I think it's 65.
How many?
I think it's 65.
Okay. How long for a cow, Dickie?
I don't remember.
Okay. Man, y'all not helping me at all. Ducks and geese, Tommy. I don't know. Deer. See, all of them have different times. But God's saying that the earth will be in bondage until what happens to us is going to affect the entire earth and everything therein. So the earth is waiting for something to happen to us. And when it happens to us, then they're going to be restored back to like what it was in the garden. That's until now. It's continuing on. I don't know how long it's going to be before the rapture. I look for him every day. I don't know. It may be a day, a week, a month, a year. And I honestly preached this and believed it. I never gave a prediction, but I used to do a lot of prophecy conferences years ago. I never believed the world would stand past the year 2000. I never believed it would. But now this is 2016. So if I was a prophet, I'd have been stoned to death for being a false prophet. But I never put a date on it. But individually, I believe that it would. That's as far as it would go. But that's how much I know. Now, let's go back to the 23rd verse. And not only they. Now, who's the they? The creation. Not only the creation, not only the animals, not only the fields of grass, not only the trees, not only everything that God created, and not only they, now here it comes, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting for the redemption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Now let's go back. And not only they, that's the creation, but ourselves. Now when Christ comes, takes us out, something is going to happen dramatically to us. It says, which have the first fruits of the Spirit. Now what is the first fruits of the Spirit? All right, let's go at it like this. When did you get the Spirit? When you got saved. Now, who was the first to ever be resurrected spiritually from the dead? Jesus. So when we accept Him, our names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, we become His creation. So we become the first fruits of Christ by the Spirit. So we're the first fruits of Jesus. Now what's going to happen? Even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting. Now it says the whole world, the whole creation, they're groaning in travail. So we're groaning in travail. We're waiting for something to happen to us that will change what we are. For the adoption, the redemption of our body. Now I want you to pay close attention. When you get saved, you are adopted spiritually into the family of God. You are a child of God by the Spirit of God and by the blood of Jesus by regeneration. You're a child of God. But your body is still serving the natural use of it, the ways of the world. That's why he says, we groaneth within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Now when Christ comes again, what's going to take place with us? All right? Say old crow dies today. And you take me and plant me in the ground. Next week, on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, the Lord comes. What's going to happen to me?
The dead in Christ shall rise.
All right. I'm going to get up before you do. I'm going to get out of my grave. And then what's going to happen to you? You're going to be changed. I'm going to be changed. And what's going to be changed about us?
Spiritual body.
Our bodies. Now the fleshly body will not exist anymore, but we have a new glorified body fashioned like that of Jesus Christ. Whatever body Jesus had that He resurrected in, that He walked in and talked in and ate in and fellowshiped with, we will have that same type of body. And then we'll go to meet the Lord in the air. And then the adoption process is completed. Now think carefully. Say I wanted to adopt Beretta. She was in a state custody.
I've never been there, though.
And so I would go fill out all the paperwork, meet all the criteria. And they would say that you are qualified to have her as your daughter. Sign all the paperwork. They'd put the stamp of approval on it and say it's approved. Now she is Beretta Crow. And you are Glenn Crow. And she is your daughter. Well, only half the transaction has been completed. She could stay in state's custody the rest of her life. She would be Beretta Crow because I've got the paperwork to prove it. But what would make the adoption complete is for someone to bring her and deliver her to my house and that transaction would be completed, and then I could look at her and she could look at me, and I could say that's my daughter and she could say that's my daddy. So right now, we are adopted in the family of God spiritually, but that transaction bodily had never taken place. So our bodily transaction is going to take place when Christ comes and gives us a new glorified body, and we're gone with Him. And He tells us, after He gives us a new glorified body, that we will be judged, we will be rewarded, and He'll give us a new name. And I'm not going to be Glenn O'Neill Crow. My middle name is very unique. Am I the only O'Neill you've ever known? When my mother and daddy, when they named me, I was there, but I don't remember. Mother said she named me Donald Dwayne. That was my first time getting named. And my dad and my mother's oldest sister didn't like that name. And Mother said, well, name him yourself. Well, my aunt, her oldest sister, her favorite actor was Glenn Ford. So she said, Glenn, that'd be a good name. Had a Pentecost preacher at Wycliffe that my dad liked a lot. His name was O'Neill Ferris. So they named me O'Neill. So I'm named after a movie star and a Pentecost preacher. Can't hardly fail, can you? But when I get to heaven, you won't call me Glenn O'Neill Crow, because I'll have a new name. And I won't call you Dickie or Brian or Celia or Brenda. We'll have a new name. Why? Because this is our earthly name, this is our earthly body, and He'll give us a new glorified body, and with that new glorified body, we'll get a new name. That just makes a lot of sense to me. Nothing from this earth will be in heaven.
Amen.
All things will be new. I've listened to all my life people saying, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jesus. You are lying. You won't ask Him nothing.
You know everything.
What you're going to ask Him won't be important, because the only thing you can ask Him is something pertaining to the flesh. All things will be new. All things will be new. I'm not going to ask Him why I got a hangnail or a toenail, or why I fell off of a building, or why I had a car wreck, or why that anything. You won't ask. No value. When we leave this earth, what's been in this earth will stay in this earth. I like that part. So the adoption's been completed. Now the world is waiting until all this takes place. 24th verse, for we are saved by hope. Now that's a statement. Now how am I saved? By hope. Talk to me.
Or the hope that you give yourself to Christ at some point.
Okay. Hope is faith. Hope is believing. Faith. But it's more than that. When he says, for we are saved by hope, you got to include the 23rd verse that goes along with the 24th verse. So what's he been talking about in the 23rd verse? He's talking about the first fruits of the Spirit. That's when we get saved. And then he's talking about our adoption spiritually into the family of God. Then he's talking about being raptured out and getting our new glorified body. And that's why he says, for we are saved by hope, or through this hope, or from this hope. But hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why does he yet hope for?
Right.
That makes good sense to me.
Right.
If you can see something, it requires no faith. If you can see it, you don't have to believe it because it's there. Now, I've never seen God. I've never seen Jesus. I've never seen heaven. But yet, my hope, my belief is that there is God. There is Christ. There is this Holy Spirit. There is heaven. I am saved. There is a hell. I know that. I believe that. Why? Because the book teaches that. It stood the test of time. If there was a contradiction in this book, I promise you every atheist in the world would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world and every news broadcast in the world. They'll say that it's just a book, but it's more than a book. It's God's book and God's love letter to us. 25th verse, for if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. I don't see it, you don't see it, but we have faith to believe in it. That's our hope. That it is real, that it is true, and that we're going to receive it. Now, Paul makes this statement. He says in this life, if that's all we have is this hope, if there's no God, if there's no heaven, if there's no Christ, he said in this life, if that's all we've got, he said we are above men most miserable. If I just believed it to help me get through the day, to help keep myself in check, I'm a miserable human being. If there's no heaven, if there's no God, if there's no Christ, if there's no salvation, I am miserable. Now we're going to see about the Spirit that lives in us and how He makes intercession. How many of us have ever been to court? All right. Did you have to have you a lawyer? Now, what does the lawyer do for you with the judge? He makes intercession. That means you keep your mouth shut and he'll do the talking. He is your representative, your go-between, between what they're saying you're guilty of, and he's going to plead your case to the judge and show the evidence that you're not guilty of it. So now we get saved. Now we're born again. But we still got a problem. Our problem is that we're still stuck on this earth. Our problem is we're still in this fleshly body. So how do we know how to function? 26th verse. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities. Now, what's infirmities?
Things that are not perfect with ourselves.
Okay. Our weaknesses. Do you have any? Do you have weaknesses? Well, how are you going to get help in coming into the presence of God if you have weaknesses? Now it says that the Spirit is in us to help us because we have weaknesses. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our weaknesses, our infirmities. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought. Now here we are saved, and we ought to know how to express ourselves to God. Have you ever had something bother you and you didn't know what was bothering you? How are you going to talk to God about it if you don't know what to talk to God about? I mean, you ever get a burden and you don't know what the burden is? How are you going to talk to God about the burden if you don't know what the burden is? He's going to answer. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought. We ought to know. We ought to know what's affecting us. But he said, hey, if you don't know what's bothering you, then the Spirit of God lives in you that is going to intercede for you. Now you remember, you go to court, the judge is there, you're here, you got a lawyer that's interceding for you. When you get saved, the Spirit of God takes residence in your life, and if there are times in your life that you don't know how to express yourself to God or your needs to God, then the Spirit of God that lives within you, He is going to intercede for you. Well, how is He going to do that? But the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. I only can express it like this. There have been times in my life my heart has been so burdened, and I didn't know why it was burdened. There have been times in my life that I just laid and wished I could just die. I don't know whether you've ever come to that place in your life or not. Didn't even know how to talk to God. And all I could do was cry and say, oh God, oh God, oh God. That's as far as I could go. That's things that you're so burdened. That's what the Spirit's there for. You ought to know, but if you don't know, He's there to make intercession for you. Now the 27th verse throws a lot of light. And He, underline the word He. And He, who is the He? Say it loud. The Spirit of God. And He that searcheth. Now, did you ever lose anything?
All the time.
And what do you have to do? Miss Brenda talked to Barbara the other night, and Barbara called her to see if she got Laverne back and forth to the hospital. Brenda said, I've lost my phone. And I can't find it. And Barbara said, you look in the car. I usually lose mine down by the console. Oh, she said, I've looked and looked. But after Barbara hung up, I said, did she look in her pocket? Did she look in her purse? So Barbara called her, and she had found her phone. So sometimes we've got to search. You got to look. I lose things. If I go to looking for something and I tear everything apart trying to find it, and I ask Barbara, I said, Barbara, where is so-and-so? This is her answer. It's where it's supposed to be. And that's right. The last time I used it, I left it where it wasn't supposed to be. And she picked it up and put it where it's supposed to be. And I went looking where it wasn't supposed to be. And while I thought it was supposed to be, it wasn't, because it was where it was supposed to be.
No wonder you lost it.
So you got to go searching. Now it said the Spirit of God lives within you. He's going to do some searching because you don't know what to talk to God about. You can't utter it. So now what's He going to do? And He that searcheth the heart. So now, where is the heart of man?
In the mind.
Up there. So the Spirit of God gets up here, and He goes to digging through, and He's searching, and He's looking, because you don't know anything. All you can do is say, oh God. So the Spirit of God searches. And what's He searching for? And He that searcheth the heart, underline this next word, knoweth. No, He already knows what you need, even though you're looking for it and can't find it. He knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit. He knows. We ought to know, but we don't know. So now he goes searching because he knows what we need. And the mind of the Spirit, because he maketh intercession, listen, he maketh intercession for the saints. Now here's the key to it all. He maketh intercession to the saints according to the will of God. Your life and my life is spent a lot of times out of the will of God. Doing what we think is the right thing. And then we get ourselves in the awfulest messes from trying to do right. I mean, you know, getting drunk, that's not a thing that ever bothers me. That don't bother me. Doing dope, that don't bother me. Running off with somebody else's wife, that don't bother me. Giving somebody a cussing, that don't bother me. Stealing, that don't bother me. Murder, that don't bother me. How about you? Now, what bothers you?
Everything you said.
Bless your heart, I'll have to really pray for you.
You sure will.
That don't bother me. But there are things that do bother me. You can't see those things, but they're there. Now, God said that He's here, living in our lives, for the saints' sake. That's us, the redeemed, the born again. And He's going to make intercession to God according to the will of God. Now see, the Spirit knows the will of God. We know the will of God. I promise you, we know right from wrong. But sometimes it gets lost in this clutter up here. So what the Spirit of God does is remind us. Now Jesus, did He not say, I will pray the Father and He shall give unto you another comforter? The word comforter is counselor. Going to counsel us. And He will lead you, guide you into all truths, and bring all things to your remembrance whatsoever I have said unto you. Now the light bulb comes on. I didn't know what to pray for. All I could do was cry and say, oh God. And then the Spirit of God began to intercede, and He began to make me aware of what I needed in my life according to the will of God. So I had to get myself out of the way. You've got to get yourself out of the way, and you say, all right, God, your will be done. I'm going to live it the way you want me to live it. I'm going to do it the way you want me to do it. I'm not going to question this. I'm just, you know, the great thing about faith and a Christian life and its growth is quit trying to rationalize everything that happens in your life. Quit trying to figure it out. What do you think? 28th verse. This is what you think. For we know. What do we know? Up here, the verses that preceded that, it said we don't know how to pray as we ought to know. But now He says we know. What do we know? We know that all things work together. Underline this next word. For, not to, for good to them that love God. I was a little boy, and Daddy raised a young mule. And we had 2 mules that we worked in the field called Kate and John. And I was wondering how he is going to break that young mule. He was wild as a guinea. One day, Daddy said, this is how we'll break it. He got him broke to the harness, and then he put him beside old John, and he hooked him into the traces. And he got the plow lines, and he clucked old John, and the young mule, I'm telling you what, all hell broke loose. John stood and helped the young mule till he just got all beside himself and quit that, and then he walked off, and the mule began to kick and buck and jump. John just held him in check. And then before long, after just a little bit, the young mule settled down, and the old mule had held him in check and had begun to guide him and show him, and then they started working together. So Jesus said, Paul writes, all things work together. There's a deeper meaning here. We work together. If you decide that church needs to go that way, and you decide it needs to go that way, and you decide it needs to go that way, and I decide it needs, that's not working together. I mean, that is organized confusion. So he says all things work. They might not work together, but they're going to work. But he said all things work together for, that's the key phrase, for what reason? For good, for good, for good, to them that love God, that love God. To them who are the called according to His purpose. Aren't you glad that God didn't make my whole body a nose? Aren't you glad that God didn't make your whole body a foot? Aren't you glad that He assembled your body together so it could function together? That's how He describes the church. We're all different looking sorts of things that He created. But He washed us and He saved us by the blood of Jesus. He put His Spirit in us, and now we've come together and we all work together to good. But He says all things work together to good to them that love the Lord according to their calling and their purpose. When I had that car wreck, I could not see. It's just been in the last couple of years that I'm beginning to deal with it. I thought God had dealt me an awful hand. And so angry with God and questioned Him. Why? You didn't do me right. I don't like you. I'm mad at you. Why did you do that to me? Well, year after year that I don't remember went by. Now I can understand. I quit questioning, first of all. Maybe some of you sitting here tonight and you're questioning, Lord, why did you let that happen to me? I quit questioning. Now I can understand, and I'm starting to deal with it, and I'm starting to come to the frame of mind. God, all that happened, and look at what it's done for me. Number one, God, it's caused me to be closer to you than I've ever been before in my life. God, it has brought such an inward peace to me that I was void of all the years that I walked with you. God, it has opened my eyes to my importance. I see you, that you're the only one that is important. And I found my place in the work of God. All I am is a newsboy. I just deliver the news. Man, that's a good thing. So I'm all things. What I thought was the end of my life, what I thought I was finished, threw out, hung on the shelf, put out to dry, God said, hey, look at it. Just look at it. And I said, you know, that's a pretty good thing. That's a pretty good thing. He brought that into my life. So all things work together to good to them that love the Lord according to their calling and their purpose. I have a calling and I have a purpose. You got a calling, you got a purpose. But now listen, get your eyes up off the things that's keeping you from fulfilling your calling and your purpose. When you do that, I'm telling you, you'll be a different person. Quit questioning. Quit saying, why? You that have raised kids, you say to your child, you that are raising kids, don't do that. Why? Don't do it. Why? I want to go. No. Why? Yeah, but I want to go. No. Why? You remember that broken record? When you was little, did you remember that broken record? Why? 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 Then when you finally grow up, you quit asking why and you know why. We need to grow up. Am I doing all right?
Yeah.
We need to grow up. And we'll quit asking why. And when we quit asking why, then we start accepting. And things begin to work. All right, that's so much for tonight. I don't know if you enjoy this or not, but boy, I'm learning.
I used to listen to Charles Stanley on the radio a whole lot, long time ago. Matter of fact, there's a period in our lives that we needed what he preached to be able to make it through. I remember one time, and I don't know what part of the lesson here reminded me of this, but there's a kind of a saying that a lot of people use to justify themselves. God helps those who help themselves. Well, Charles Stanley said, God has to help those who help themselves because they made such a mess out of everything, they can't straighten it out.
Well, you got it right. He got it, he nailed it right. You know that Charles Stanley, I love him. He is a complete opposite of me. He talks, but more with authority. He can carve you up and lay you out, and you never know he's laid a glove on you until the next day. I'm telling you. But it's with the authority of God for. Appreciate that. Let's stand.